Hey guys, Bulletproof Bee here again, and welcome to another raw video. The topic of this one is going to be the cost of mental health and talking a little bit about mental health recovery as well. I don't mean that in the sense of a financial cost, even though for some people that can be something that they need to go through and experience, but I'm going to talk about the mental and physical costs of mental health. So I'm just going to dive straight in there and say that the main thing that I've noticed with most mental health disorders is that a lot of people end up losing a sense of self, and that's something which I think can be very hard and can also be quite detrimental in terms of actually trying to find an effective recovery process as well. Because for a lot of people, if you've been dealing with mental health issues, particularly if you've been dealing with them for a long time, it can end up that basically this disorder that you're dealing with can become a part of your personality and a part of who you are, and it can basically make it really, really hard to imagine your life without dealing with these problems. I know that I've been having that myself, particularly recently, as I've been actually trying to properly recover, not just from my eating issues but from a lot of other things that have been going on in my life, and trying to get over those mental barriers that I've had. But I feel like once those issues are gone, I'm gonna have a bit of a void, because a lot of my time was spent basically these things in my head ended up becoming my friends, and that sounds really weird to say, but it is very true, and I like to think a lot of people who watch this will understand that if they're going through mental health issues, that they can basically end up becoming a real strong part of you, and imagining these parts of you gone, it's sort of like losing your right arm, or your left arm if you're left-handed. And I think that is probably one of the main costs of mental health, that they can end up really impacting the way that you view yourself and the way that you view others, and it can also end up being like you find yourself in a little bubble of mental health. And one of the things that I'd say that can be quite good is to end up finding yourself in a bubble of mental health recovery, because even though it can still become quite an obsessive thing, I know that recovery for some people, I know particularly within the eating disorder community, when people start to recover, it can end up becoming quite a fixated thing. For example, Instagram, a lot of people post up pictures of all of their food and all that, and it can be really, really good. For some people it's really beneficial, but personally I found for myself, I've done that before, and it made me really obsess about a different part of recovery. And for that level is a little bit too much for me, but it can be good to basically use having a recovery bubble as making a bit of a transition from having these disordered thoughts in your head that were your friends and the things that you focused on and that was yourself, to then transition into recovery, which is healthier. It can still be quite an obsessive part in your head, but it helps you to transition into finding who you really are without any of these disordered thoughts or feelings, or having to recover from disordered thoughts or feelings. And it can also teach you really good coping strategies as well, that you can then carry through into your, hopefully eventually, just normal day-to-day life. So yeah, losing a sense of self. Having a clouded judgment, I think, also sort of falls under the same category, sort of like an umbrella term of losing yourself, because it can impact, mental health disorders can impact how you respond to people and how you view people and what you interpret what they're saying to you as meaning. And also a lot of people can end up in quite mentally or physically dangerous situations because their judgment is so clouded, and you can end up being quite impulsive, or equally the other way, you can end up being so scared and you end up doing nothing. And those are two very extreme ends of the spectrum. Obviously there is everything in between that people go through, but still people's judgment of different areas of their lives can end up being quite morphed, and I think that's one of the another one of the big things that I've found. Something else that a lot of people have said to me that they deal with is that basically life events and things like that can end up appearing a lot more dramatic or less dramatic than what they would normally be in like their sort of sane mind. And that is something that I can really, really empathise with. I mean, over the past sort of 18 months, yes, I've been dealing with a lot of my own issues and my own stresses, but there's been a lot of things going on, particularly within my family. There's been a lot of other people dealing with mental health. There's been people dealing with a lot of quite serious physical health problems, and also I've been dealing with quite a few grievances in the family as well recently. And these are sorts of things which I am normally very responsive to. I get quite sad easily, and I get quite overly emotional and empathetic. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing at all, I'm just saying that that is me normally. But because I've been dealing with some of the worst parts of my own mental health recently as well, I've found that I've been a lot more, not apathetic, but a lot more just sort of factual about things. And in some ways I guess that's been good, because it meant I've been able to be there better for the rest of my family and other people. But equally I feel like I'm sort of waiting for me to get back to my own head, and then I can deal with my own grieving time then, because I'm not able to do that now because everything's sort of contorted in my head about how things are right now. I know other people have said to me that they felt the exact same, where things have just sort of gone over their head, or they've really impacted them when that's not normally who they are. So on top of everything that a mental health disorder can give you, I think those are some of the things that equally can impact on most people in terms of a mental impact. Then I also think the actual physical impact of mental health, I feel like that's something which is spoken about less. It's starting to be spoken about more, which is brilliant, but I feel like overall there isn't a lot of support given for the physical side effects of things like depression, anxiety, and other mental health disorders as well. I think one of the stigmas that can come to people who are dealing with mental health that is put on them is that they can end up just becoming quite lazy and just sort of blasé, and they're not really interested in doing anything, they'd rather just stay in bed. But it's not just a case of you're depressed so you think that you can just lie around all day. That isn't the case at all. Dealing with a mental health disorder can be really physically draining. Obviously your body is going through a lot of different emotions a lot of the time. It can weaken things like your immune system and everything, like stress can be a big impact, and then add on other mental illnesses and disorders as well. It can really take a toll on your body. So for people who do need to take time out and just rest in bed or read a book or just get away and do their own thing, it's not being lazy, it's literally just recovering from what your mental health has done to your body. I'm a really proactive person. I like to get out and I like to do things, and I like to always be jottering about doing different things. But on some of my worst days, I literally find it so hard to just open my eyes in the morning, to lift my head off a pillow. It is so, so bad. And I know a lot of other people go through a similar thing, and I think it's a case of trying to break the stigma that it isn't just a case of I'm avoiding people or I don't want to go outside. I mean, for some people that is the case. Some people do end up being worried about going outside. Some people deal with things like social anxiety disorders and things like that, and obviously for those people it does make total sense. But in a more general sense, I've found that sometimes I do just need R&R, and a lot of people need R&R. People who aren't dealing with mental health need R&R. Christ, we all need a time where we just lie in until midday sometimes. I mean, we all just need that break, I think, from what our heads are doing and what our heads are telling us. So yeah, that's one of, I think, the biggest costs that's been happening in terms of physicality for a lot of people, including me. But it's a case of, similarly with like all of the mental things, to remember that you can just, they will eventually go, and things will normalise eventually with the correct help and support. Another thing in terms of physical costs of mental health can be really long-term physical health conditions. Again, something I feel which isn't spoken about too much, but particularly within sort of eating disorders and things like that. It's one of the reasons why I'm such an advocate for early intervention. I mean, early intervention is like brilliant anyway because it stops people going through extended periods of mental stress and all this sort of thing. But also the physical impacts that eating disorders can have on your body are absolutely insane. And it doesn't matter what your weight is or BMI is or anything. If you are severely overeating or undereating or dealing with food in a less so than kind of normal way, it can really, really quickly impact your body, like a lot quicker than you would expect. People with eating disorders can develop things like osteoporosis, diabetes, it can affect your heart, it can affect women's fertility. These things can affect so much, and people need to be aware of how quickly these things can set in. I mean, my diet has been very, I don't use the word yo-yo, but for want of a better term, yo-yo-y. Going through quite extreme cycles of restricting and binging and things like that. And I'm really quite lucky that I haven't ended up with diabetes as a result of that. I know that some people have been less fortunate and have recovered mentally from their eating disorders, however they are stuck with these physical implications for life now, and it's quite sad to see that that is the case. But again, I think it's something where if there's more awareness made about it, it can help people to sort of realise earlier that they need help. Also can be a reason for people to push for help sooner. I know sometimes within the health sector, from the medical point of view, there can be a bit of a idea that certain weights require more help than people of other weights. And I'm not going to go too in depth about that because I don't want to end up ranting too much, but yes, that can end up being quite detrimental, and it's a reason to push sooner rather than later that you need help before things end up worse. And that should be what health services want, obviously, that we're all better as soon as possible. So yes, those are the main things that I've noticed within mental and physical costs of like mental health, particularly obviously talking about eating disorders. In one of my next videos, I don't think it'll be the next one, it might be the one after that, I'm looking to talk about sort of external costs of mental health, where I'm going to talk mainly about relationships, be they romantic relationships or whether it's with friends, parents, carers, anyone, and the impact that mental health can have on these relationships and how you can help to support yourself, but also possibly give a few tips that you could share with other people and how they could help you as well. So I'm hoping to shed a bit of light on that in the future. But for now, thank you very, very much for watching. Hope you might have gained a little bit of insight here, might have found a few things that you could maybe talk to people about if you have parents or carers that are maybe a little bit unsure of what you're going through, and maybe if you're experiencing some of the things I've mentioned in this video, you could show them as a way to open up a discussion. Either way, just hope that someone out there has gotten something from this video, and I will hopefully see you in the next one. So yes, like, comment, share, subscribe, and I will see you later. Bye guys.